friends, welcome back once again. 138 MMA here to break down UFC 282. We're going to cover every single fight on the card, starting with the earliest of prelims, through the regular prelims, through the main card, and even the main event, of course. We're going to cover every single fight, but here's the thing. Just got word, hour ago or so. The fight between Santiago Ponzinibbio and Robbie Lawler is off. Robbie Lawler injured. He's out. They are looking for a replacement for Santiago Ponzinibbio to fight. If Ponzinibbio does get another opponent, I will make a separate video that is going to break down that fight. But until then, we're just going to have this video without it. But without any further ado, let's get into the prelims right after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, 138 MMA proudly brings to you the hottest picks in the world!
For anybody that's familiar with this channel already, not to you newbies, but to the people that are here that have been here for a while, something new that I'm starting to do is I'm going to put the full record and then the last 5 fights. Typically in videos past, obviously you know that I usually just do the last 5 fights. I'm going to try this one out. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you want me to keep doing this, putting the full record and the last 5, or if you don't think the whole record matters. I didn't think it mattered, but, I guess it gives a little bit of context to how much experience they have. But the last 5 fights is really what matters going into a fight because fighters in general just change so much over their career. So the last 5 is what really matters. But now you get both. So let me know. Anyway, on to the first fight. We have Cameron Saaiman taking on Steven Koslow. Now this fight is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, both guys are very similar in their style, or in their careers, I mean. Both of them 6-0, both 5-0 in their last 5 fights, so that, obviously, there's that. But they have the reverse skill set. So, Koslow, ground guy. Definitely in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's his style, but he can strike. On the other hand, Saaiman, definitely a striker. Kickboxing all the way, but, he can grapple as well. So, the guys, they both are good in both areas for being as early as they are in their career. But each guy kind of excels in the other guy's second set, if you will. So in this one here, I'm going to cover Koslow real quick first. He does have that strong Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like I talked about. He works something I highlighted here, his submissions and his transitions. Those are the things that I saw in his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I really liked the most. Obviously, there are different aspects. Some people looking for, how do they hold position, things like that. I like the way he transitions between different submissions and different positions. I like the way that he can flow through that really well and kind of cut through people pretty easily. Realistically, we don't have a ton of stuff to go off of in his MMA career because he puts everybody out of there real quick. So with his grappling, he can strike. He does have a karate background. His striking is kind of awkward. You can tell that he's really just looking for the takedown so he can work his jiu-jitsu. But he does have a karate background. He started when he was a little kid, so that helps. He's never really used it in the fights that I was not like a traditional karate background. So it's there, I guess. Whatever. Anyway, on to the other side. We'll cover the last part in a minute. So for Saaiman, strong kickboxing. That's going to be his best path to victory here, is keeping the fight on the feet and using his kickboxing. If he goes to the ground, he's not lost. He'll be able to survive at least longer than a lot of the guys that Koslow's already beaten. Most of the guys he beat were kind of, so-so. But he does have pretty good wrestling in his own right. The thing that I like the most about Saaiman that is not as just readily available as, oh yeah, he's a good kickboxer, is the fact that he can adjust in between rounds. You see, so when a lot of fighters go to the corner, then they come out and they do the same dang thing that they did in the first round or the second round, and now it's in the third round. He can switch that up, and that's probably more of a nod to his coaches than it is specifically to him. But the fact that he's willing to listen to his coach and actually adjust the game plan accordingly, I do like that. So there is that. Now to the negatives for the guys that the things that I don't like so much. Striking defense on Saaiman's side, it's not really his best asset. He's more of an offensive striker and kind of just gets hit in the process. He can turn it into a war, and that's not what you want most of the time. I don't know that it's going to be a big problem here because, like I said, Koslow, he has that awkward striking. It's not really good. It's all right, but it does enough just to distract you for the takedown. But the thing that sucks for Koslow here is this is a really short notice fight. This is like 2 weeks or less, probably something like that. I don't know for sure, but it's a pretty short notice fight. Okay, I almost picked Koslow in this fight because of the grappling and his jiu-jitsu is so strong, but because it's such a short notice fight, I'm gonna just the slightest bit lean Saaiman. I wouldn't bet this. This is one that both guys making their debut. Just leave it off. It's not worth it. There's better fights to bet on this card. But I'm going to take Saaiman for the official pick. Let me know what you guys think. If you think I'm overlooking something, I would love to hear it as always. But anyway, let's move on to the next fight. We got some good ones. Light heavyweight division. We have Ovince St. Preux taking on Antonio Trocoli. In this fight, it's going to be kind of another interesting one because we have another short notice replacement. In fact, Ovince has actually had 2 other opponents on this card, and this is now his 3rd. So we'll see if this one pans out. But in this fight, we have Ovince St. Preux. He's 2-3 in his last 5 fights. You can see the full record right there. And for Trocoli, 3-1 and 1 no contest in his last 5. You can see the full record right there as well. A couple of things to highlight here are some of the intangibles. Trocoli is 6'6", which is going to make him quite the taller fighter in most instances, especially in the light heavyweight division. For Ovince St. Preux, he is 6'3", not too far off, but that extra 3 inches in height, I've explained it in a lot of videos. I'm not going to beat it to death, but you understand punching up is a lot harder, a lot more fatiguing on your shoulders, and it's also just harder to hit. So there is that. The other problem is Ovince is getting older. He's 39. Now, I know at light heavyweight, you can kind of go a little bit later in a career, but for Ovince, 39, he's been around. He's had quite a few fights. Obviously, 26-16 as a record. There you go. I highlighted it for you. For 26-16 as a record, obviously he's been around for a while. So there is that to take into account with the guy that is 39. So it's been in UFC for a while. In this matchup, though, it's interesting because we've got St. Preux, who's extremely low volume. Like, to the point that sometimes you're not sure if he's awake or not. Just kidding, not quite that bad. But he doesn't do a lot sometimes. But when he does, there's a lot of times fight-ending movements. So when he hits you, he can put you out. His striking is it's very powerful when he does decide to throw his hands. And on the ground, if you get him down there, the guy's got sneaky submissions. So much so that they've, well, at least a lot of the commentators will, rename the Von Flue choke to the St. Preux choke. Because, technically he does have more St. Preux chokes than Jason Von Flue, who was originally the inventor of the Von Flue choke. So with that said, Ovince St. Preux he's skilled, but just doesn't do much. So that's something to take into account. On the other side, for Trocoli, he does have good grappling. Wow. Just put wrestling and grappling together. He has good grappling and good wrestling. There you go, grappling. He has those things. The problem, though, is he has a small frame for the light heavyweight division. He's fought as low as welterweight. He's fought at middleweight, which is actually probably where he should be, is probably middleweight. He's 6'6". I don't see him making too much success at welterweight to make that weight. So at welterweight. So I don't see him going down there again. But middleweight's probably where he should be because he does have a small frame for the light heavyweight division. But this is a short notice fight. So most likely after this fight, if he does get to stay in the UFC, say he gets a win here, if he does, I could see him moving down to middleweight, and that'd probably be a more comfortable place for him. And because of that, I'm actually going to take St. Preux here. Not confident in it whatsoever. I really don't recommend betting this one. Like I said in the last video, there are other fights on this card that I will recommend a whole lot more. But with Trocoli taking this short notice, being at light heavyweight where he is just not built for it, even though he is the taller fighter here, he's the smaller framed fighter. And I think St. Preux is going to be way more powerful, way stronger. When that wrestling and that grappling from Trocoli when he comes forward with that, tries to use the takedowns, I think St. Preux is going to be able to muscle his way out of that, be able to stuff the takedowns, and then be able to either land his own takedown and work on the ground, or I think he's going to be able to land some shots, some power shots, and drop Trocoli. Like I said, smaller frame guy. When you get hit by Ovince St. Preux, you're going to feel it. So for me, I'm going to take St. Preux. Not confident in whatsoever, though. I would not bet this. This is one of the least confident picks on the card because St. Preux just doesn't do stuff sometimes and can just give away a whole fight by just standing there. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think. I've got a couple more fights coming up. Actually, there's like 11 more fights coming up. So bantamweight, we have Raul Rosas Jr. taking on Jay Perrin. Jay Perrin, 10-6 in his overall career, but 2-3 in his last 5. The UFC has not been kind to him so far. He's had a couple of close fights. He made it close in his last one. I actually backed him in his last fight, but it obviously didn't pan out for me. But Jay Perrin, right there, rough go of it lately. And now he draws the young Raul Rosas Jr., 6-0 in his career, obviously 5-0 in his last 5. In this matchup, it's going to be kind of Jay Perrin's last shot in the UFC. If he loses this, I'm sure he's out. But if he wins this, okay, well, he shuts down that young prospect and can keep a spot in the UFC, kind of see where he goes from there. That's the way I see this fight being put together. That's the reason I see there. For Raul Rosas Jr., though, he does have a lot of hype coming from the Contender Series, coming into the UFC. Everybody was making a big deal about how he had to get his parents to sign a waiver for him to be on the Contender Series. Honestly, if I was him, I'd have been like, guys, can we just wait till next season? I don't want to have to get my parents involved. But you know what, Raul Rosas Jr., he didn't care. And you know what? It doesn't matter. He won the fight. He got into the UFC. Good for him. There we go. So he actually did it pretty well. He didn't look bad in that fight. It wasn't a close fight either. He did win pretty dominantly by decision. So for Raul Rosas, he is 5'9" with a 67-inch reach, which is going to give a slight advantage over the 5'7", 66-inch reach of Jay Perrin. I only highlight that here because Jay Perrin's best path to victory is in the boxing. And I do believe that Jay Perrin will have a significant boxing advantage. And I do think if he does have success in this fight, it will probably be at boxing range. So Raul Rosas does have the length there. He's taller, harder to hit that way. He does have an inch in reach. Can he use that to kind of evade the boxing of Jay Perrin? I don't know. I think Jay Perrin's got pretty decent boxing. On the other hand, Rosas isn't terrible in his striking. It's just clearly not what he's the best at. What he's best at is his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is very solid in that aspect. I don't expect a finish here. Jay Perrin's tough. Maybe he gets it, but I don't expect it. He does have strong wrestling. You see it, or let's see. How do I put this? You saw a lot of his high school wrestling matches in footage leading up to his Contender Series fight. So let's put it that way. So, yeah. So he gets strong wrestling. He does have good cardio. He's able to go 3 hard rounds of grappling without any trouble. So that is good to see from a guy who's probably going to have to get this fight to the ground to have success. On the other hand, Jay Perrin is not lacking in the wrestling department as well. He does have pretty good wrestling himself. I do think Jay Perrin is a live underdog in this matchup, but for me, I am going to slightly favor Raul Rosas Jr. Yet again, not one I'd bet. If you tossed a little flyer out there on Jay Perrin, I wouldn't blame you. He is, like I said, he's a live underdog here. He does have some pretty good paths to victory, mainly being his boxing. The one thing I don't see is Jay Perrin being able to win this fight with extended amounts of grappling. However, he does have good wrestling, and Rosas can be taken down. So if Jay Perrin decides to sink a takedown, right at the end of the round, kind of bank that round for sure, or maybe get the fight up against the cage and kind of wrestle that way, not so much in the takedown and hold down, because I think that's not the best path to victory for Perrin. I do see a way that he does win. So I'm going to slightly edge Rosas, but no bet here. Let's go to the next fight. Flyweight bout that has all the makings of the fight of the night for as long as it lasts. Should only last probably about 3-4 minutes, because this fight is going to be a barn burner from start to finish. We have Vinicius Salvador, 4-1 in his last 5, taking on Daniel da Silva, who is 2-3 in his last 5. Salvador coming off that Contender Series win, where he looked pretty good, but he made the fight closer than it really had to be, because he doesn't really have any sort of defense whatsoever. He's just offense, and if you can't put a guy out quickly with just offense, sometimes you get hit and make it a little bit closer than it should be. On the other side, Daniel da Silva, similar concept. The dude, he's not done so well in the UFC. He's made it close. He's come really close to winning a couple of fights, but then just doesn't really have any sort of defense whatsoever and can get caught in things. So that's how that works. For Salvador, we're going to cover him real quick. Like I said, all offense, no defense. He does have good striking and good grappling, so I guess decent would be a better word than good. I don't know if it's good yet. He makes it close with guys that he shouldn't, so I'm going to say it's decent. So Salvador, not a bad prospect. I just don't see him making it to the highest of levels in the flyweight division. It is a tough division, and especially when you have some guys you got to get through, like Daniel da Silva. That'll take some time off of your career because it's going to be a barn burner for as long as it lasts. For Daniel da Silva, killer be killed style, start to finish, same as we know from every one of his fights in the UFC so far. He does have some decent Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is susceptible to being caught, though, because he did in that Francisco Figueiredo fight. He did get caught in a knee bar. That sucks. You never want to get caught in a knee bar. Those hurt real bad. So he does have the chance of getting caught while he's seeking his own submissions, but he also could put you out with one of his submission of his, and he can knock you out in the striking as well. He does have really explosive spinning techniques, spinning kicks, spinning back fists, spinning elbows, whatever. That's all well and good, and that's awesome when it lands, but it opens you up to be taken down or to be hit or whatever. It is a very high risk, high reward style on the feet for Daniel da Silva, which is why he either finishes you or you finish him. And that's just the way that it is. So if you're betting this fight straight up, picking a guy and going with him, you are a total degenerate. And I almost applaud you because that takes some serious stones. I couldn't pick either of these guys money line and just play them. I don't see that as a smart move here. The under 2.5, though, if you can get the under 2.5 at anything better than minus 500, play it, because I don't see this going over 2.5 rounds. And realistically, at minus 500, it's still playable because I just don't see this going past 2.5 rounds. If this fight goes to decision, I will lose my mind. Cannot see that happening. Daniel da Silva will not let that happen. I believe he is the most decision-phobic fighters in the entire UFC. He will not want to go to a decision because he's going to try and get this done in the first round, and if he doesn't, he's just going to collapse by the end of round 2 from total exhaustion. So for me, if I have to pick a fighter, because I will, this is what I do on this channel, I'm going to take Salvador. Let me know what you guys think, though. If you guys are really high on either of these guys, I don't know why, but if you are, let me know. I do think this under 2.5 is the only real play in this matchup. Let me know what you guys think about the under 2.5. Yeah, other than that, let's get to the next featherweight. We have Erik Silva finally making his UFC debut after the Dana White's Contender Series. He is 9-1, 5-0 in his last 5. He is taking on TJ Brown, who's kind of had a rough run in the UFC as of late. He is 16-9, 2-3 in the last 5. In this matchup, though, it's kind of interesting because debuting fighter Erik Silva is 35 years old, but he does have some really high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got a good takedown to get it there. But on the feet, he's got good boxing. He throws crisp, straight punches and nice, solid leg kicks. Really, Erik Silva's pretty darn solid. The only big negative I see is that 35 years of age and at featherweight, that makes for not much longer for a career. I mean, as you may know, the older the division or the higher the division in weight, the older the fighter can carry their skills, it seems. Typically because power matters more at a higher weight division. But as you get to the lower divisions, not many guys can carry on into their late 30s and early 40s or whatever. Erik Silva's already 35, and he's only had 10 fights in his entire career. So maybe the lack of miles on the body can play off for Silva. The style he uses might be able to give him some longevity there. But 35, that's the biggest drawback I see from Erik Silva here in this matchup. On the other side, we have TJ Brown. He's a good wrestler with the ability just to grind guys out, win minutes. He's got good sweeps from the bottom. So if you do take him down, so if Erik Silva takes him down, there's a chance TJ Brown ends up on top. He's not bad with that wrestling, but that's pretty much the only thing I see that is going to give him a path to victory here. I don't see TJ Brown finishing Erik Silva. He is very hittable on the feet, so if Silva wants to come at him with that boxing attack, come at him with the leg kicks, mixing that up, I think he has success on the feet. Erik Silva rear naked chokes just about everybody. He had a 4 rear naked choke winning streak prior to his last fight on the Contender Series where he ended up getting the TKO. But Erik Silva, yeah, I think he should win this fight pretty easily. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, don't count out TJ Brown. Some people are picking TJ Brown. I don't think so. TJ Brown has not impressed me in the UFC. I do think he's a decent fighter. I don't think he's had good matchups in the UFC. I don't think this is a good matchup for him. He did get a win over Kai Kamaka, who I mentioned in my Bellator video. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out. At the end of this video, I'll have a link to it. Don't worry. But you see what I did there? But anyway, I do think Erik Silva is probably going to be the one to get the win here. You guys let me know what you think, but I think Erik Silva gets this one done by finish. He is a big finisher. If you're playing Erik Silva and you're wanting to get wild, I don't know that I would play specifically submission because he can get the ground and pound. So for me, I would just play him inside the distance, and that should get you to even money. I don't think he's a big favorite at this point, but Erik Silva's not a bad play. I wouldn't put much on him, but he's not a bad play. I don't think TJ Brown has a path to victory here other than using his wrestling and grinding out a decision, and I think that's going to be really tough against a guy with the jiu-jitsu level of Erik Silva. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. A couple of exciting fighters here in the middleweight division. We have Chris Curtis, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, taking on Joaquin Buckley, who is 3-2 in his last 5. Now, in this matchup, these are a couple of guys who both guys can put people's lights out, and that's going to make for an exciting fight in this middleweight fight here. For Buckley, he's been on the wrong end of a few highlight reels, but he's also been on the right side of a few highlight reels. Most impressively, his knockout of Impa Kasanganay that just blew up on the internet, was one of the sickest knockouts anybody's ever seen. That like spinning sidekick to the face or whatever. Super sick knockout. So Buckley, known for his flashy striking, as I've highlighted there, he is a all explosion, action-packed fighter. You love to see that. The best thing about that is he's 28 years old. He's heading right into the prime of his career. So Buckley's doing that right. On the other side, we have Chris Curtis. Now, 35, getting up there in the age. His last fight was not his best fight. Now, I want to preface that by saying his last fight was on short notice, and he was taking on Jack Hermansson, who is a very tough out. Now, I know Hermansson just lost to Dolidze. Curtis was in his corner, so good on him there. That fight was on short notice, and every now and then a fighter just has a bad night. Now, you don't want to see that if you're betting the Curtis side. You don't want to see a bad night, but I don't think that he's going to make a habit of that. It just happens sometimes. For Chris Curtis, though, he also can put people's lights out, similar to what I was saying about Buckley. In fact, he was starching folks throughout his whole UFC career so far, aside from that Hermansson fight. So for me, I think we can kind of look past that Hermansson fight. It was short notice, like I said, and kind of analyze the rest of the fights that he's had and get a better read on where we think he's going to be in this matchup. So for this one, Curtis is more the counter striker. He's not the type of guy that's going to, run you down and just use all these like spinning side kicks and like flying knees and stuff. No, he's capable of doing those things. He's a talented fighter, don't get me wrong, but he's more of a counter striker, and he plays off of someone that comes forward well. Now, he's in luck here because Joaquin Buckley does come forward with pressure. So this should make for a good fight because Buckley's going to come forward, use that pressure, try to get those flashy knockouts, and Chris Curtis is going to say, well, this is exactly what I wanted. It may not be because he may get hit, may get knocked out, but he also may turn the tides and hit with a counter strike and put Buckley into the shadow realm. I could see that happening from both sides. Both guys do possess the ability to do that, which makes this a scary one to bet. But I understand if you really feel strongly about one side. I've got one side. I'm leaning pretty hard on this one, and I'll tell you about it in a minute. Something else I like about Chris Curtis is his takedown defense. It's legendary at this point. The guy just doesn't get taken down. He's so good at stopping the takedowns. Chris Curtis is he's one of the best I've ever seen at it at this point. Like, the guy just doesn't get taken down. Vieira shot, 20-some-odd takedowns? He stuffed every single one. Adolfo Vieira is, like, not bad at his wrestling. He can take you down. He's a high-level grappler. Curtis shut them all down. Nobody's taking this dude down. Phil Haas not taking this dude down. Doesn't matter. And like I said, because Joaquin Buckley does come forward, that plays right into Curtis's style. Now, I put needs opponent to come forward as a negative because typically that's going to be a negative. It was in the Hermansson fight. Hermansson didn't play into that counter-striking of Curtis. He stayed on the outside and used his range to just kind of pitter-patter his way to a victory. Kind of a not super exciting victory, but pitter-patter his way to a victory. So I put that as a negative because in most fights it will be. In this one, it's really kind of a positive because I don't see Buckley just chilling on the outside. He's coming forward. And the dude's like a dang bowling ball. He's going to come right through, and he's going to try to hurt you. So for me, I do think that plays into Curtis's favor. The thing that's going to be interesting, though, is Joaquin Buckley has deceptive cardio. We saw it in his last fight where that third round, the dude came out and darn near got a 10-8. And if he did, I think that would have been a draw. Darn near got himself a 10-8. And in fact, I might have scored it as a 10-8 because he was landing some bombs in that fight. But he clearly lost the first two rounds. Had he turned it up a little bit earlier, he might have been able to steal that fight. He probably would have, actually. Because I did really like the aggression that he showed in that third round. But that just shows that he can turn it up at the end of a fight. That fight, it might have been too little too late. However, I think he's learned his lesson, and I don't think he's going to wait around to the last round to be able to turn it up in this fight here. This one should be a barn burner. I don't know what the under 2.5 is. I wouldn't mind a play there. I feel like somebody's probably getting finished, but maybe not. I mean, both guys are tough, but we've seen Buckley get knocked out before, so a Curtis knockout is also, that's what he does. He knocks guys out. So for me, I'm going to lean the Curtis side here. I'm not big on it, but I'm leaning the Curtis side. His last fight does scare me just a little bit, but for me, I think the fact that Buckley's going to come forward with pressure is going to play right into the game of Chris Curtis. He does have that counter-striking ability. Like I said, I think that although Buckley has potential to get that flashy knockout here, Curtis has more more paths to a knockout than Buckley does, because Curtis is the more defensively sound fighter, and I think that's going to pay off for him big in this fight. So for me, I'm taking Chris Curtis. I'm pretty sure he's an underdog right now. I think he might have opened as a favorite, but I think he's an underdog now. So, that's that one. I wouldn't play a lot on it, like I said, maybe a half unit or something like that, but anyway, you know what I know. Let me know what you guys think. Let's move on to the next featherweight division. Alex Hernandez is making his featherweight debut in the UFC. He's been a lightweight for most of his career. He's moving down to featherweight, 145 pounds. That's an extra 10 pounds for him. 155 is where he's called home. But he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, and I assume that has something to do with the move down in weight class. Put a new coat of paint on it and see how it goes. So Alex Hernandez, he is moving to 145 after a 2-3 in his last 5 fights. I get that. That makes sense. Billy Quarantillo on the other side of him across the octagon. He is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He is a mainstay of the 145-pound division. This matchup should be a good one because we've got a couple of different styles here with the high power, explosive wrestling, decent boxing, but just more power and explosion out of Hernandez against the high volume, good cardio, just putting a pace on you that Billy Quarantillo puts forward. So for me, Alex Hernandez, his best path to victory is to put power forth in his shots, use his wrestling early, and ground and pound out Quarantillo before Quarantillo can really start putting that pace on him. The problem is, like I said, how well is his cardio going to be moving down an extra 10 pounds when he's already a very, very powerful, strong guy at 155? He's now moving down even further. The guy, he's going to either have to give up some muscle or give up a lot of cardio by sucking out way too much water from that frame. So for me, that scares me, but Hernandez does have the explosion, the speed, the power that he can win this fight with. On the other side, though, you have a guy who has good striking, good grappling, but the pace and volume is what wins Billy Quarantillo fights. He goes at you, he puts it on you, and for Billy Quarantillo, I think that if he's able to weaponize that pace a little bit, weather the early storm that Hernandez is probably going to have, I think Billy Quarantillo should get this one done. I don't like the striking defense out of Hernandez. I do think that sometimes he blocks a punch with his face and really doesn't like the feeling of that and decides to start kind of panicking a little bit and do what he has to do to try to end the fight quickly, and it doesn't always go his way. So Alexander Hernandez, not the best striking defense, and I think that's trouble against a guy that's going to put forth a lot of volume like Quarantillo, especially your chin's going to be susceptible after cutting that extra 10 pounds. I just can't trust Hernandez in his debut here at 145. Obviously, he's been in the UFC. I mean, his debut in the weight class. So for me, Quarantillo is the pick. I haven't bet him. I don't know if I will. The odds are a little wide for my liking. I do think that there is finishing upside on Hernandez, but I do like Quarantillo here, so I am going to pick him, and we will see you in the next fight. Let me know what you guys think about this one and all the other fights on this card. Funny story. I got to redo this video. I just somehow accidentally switched my camera to time-lapse. Not sure I did that, but the video was really dumb. So, time-lapse. Oh, that was annoying. Anyway, here we are. We're in this one. We're going to redo this video. I hope it's good. Either way. This is the one fight I didn't want to have to redo because this fight is not fun to talk about. We have a 185-pound matchup, middleweight division between Dalcha Lungiambula, 1-4 in his last 5 fights, taking on Edmen Shahbazyan, just 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Both guys, this is probably their last shot in the UFC if they do not get a win here, especially Lungiambula, who's 1-4 at the age of 35. There is the 25-year-old across from him, Shahbazyan, who does have an opportunity to maybe stick around if he doesn't get the win here, but I wouldn't be confident in that. I think whoever loses this is going home. Winner probably sticks around for one more fight, maybe 2, unless they can start stringing together a couple of wins. In this matchup, though, there is a very large height discrepancy on the Shahbazyan side. He's 6'2" as opposed to the 5'8" of Dalcha Lungiambula. Lungiambula's short dude. He's a big, like, bowling ball of a man. Like, he's strong, powerful, big muscles, but the guy's short. So obviously there's going to be a big reach or height advantage for Shahbazyan, but I think the reach is actually really close. If I do remember, it's like 70 some odd inches for both of them, and they're pretty close. They're within an inch or two. I didn't write it up there because the reach was close, but the height actually plays a big factor, and that's the thing. A lot of people think the reach is the biggest factor, and sometimes it can be, but reach is also including the shoulders. So like your wide shoulders. Lungiambula has really wide shoulders, and that's why that reach is there. Because when you measure reach, you measure from arm out to arm out, all the way out. And for Lungiambula, those big shoulders are what's giving him that reach. It's not the long arms. So for me, Shahbazyan's going to have the reach advantage, even though it may not say so on paper. Either way, let's look at this. So I didn't really write the negatives up here because they both have the same problem. The problem is both of them lack cardio. They both get tired pretty easily. They both sometimes just don't do anything. Sometimes they'll wait for opportunities and just don't do anything. So that's kind of the issue that both of them have. And this has all the makings of possibly the most boring fight on the card if both of them are waiting for their opportunity and not doing a whole lot, or if they will get tired and just kind of wait. So that's an issue that they could both have. On the other hand, they both have some upsides. Now, for Lungiambula, he does a good judo. I don't really watch a lot of judo or whatever, but if you do, maybe you can elaborate more on that. But he does have a pretty high-level judo background from my understanding. And he does have some strong KO power. You can't be built like that and not have KO power. If so, you gotta send that back for a refund because you got ripped off with those muscles. But no, the dude's got big, powerful punches, big, powerful strikes. He's just a powerful guy. That judo probably helps that he is very strong. He can toss you around a little bit better, just muscling through some stuff. He can get you up against the cage and hold you there because he's a powerful dude. So there's that. There's some pluses for Lungiambula. Not really impressed with a whole lot else. He hasn't really done much in the UFC to make me impressed with him. And not that he gives a crap what I think, so there's that. On the other side, we have Edmen Shahbazyan, who, like it was mentioned, at one point was one of the most hyped prospects in the UFC. He was coming into the UFC anyway. He was, trained with some big names. You all know what that is. I'll tell you about it in a second. But he's also, the thing about Edmen Shahbazyan is that when he was coming in, he was looking impressive. He was getting some wins, looking good doing it. He does have really clean striking. He's fast, quick, powerful. He does have his wrestling in his back pocket as well. He can wrestle. He doesn't need to most of the time, as that striking is really solid, but he can mix in the wrestling. The problem is, like I said, the cardio and the volume. He can fall off a cliff there. Here's the thing. Say what you will about Ronda Rousey, but she was Edmen Shahbazyan's training partner, and she was, I believe, a silver medalist in judo. So I'm pretty sure that he picked up a thing or two about judo in the time that he was training with her for the many years that he did, because that's what kind of brought him to the dance. He started training there at the same gym as her in like high school or something, and did that all the way through to getting into the UFC or whatever. Yeah, I mean, say what you will about her. Like I said, she might have been a one-trick pony, but darn it, she knew how to do some judo. So judo, probably not going to work out for Lungiambula here. The power, though, that is still there. So Lungiambula could put the lights out of Edmen Shahbazyan, and I would not be too surprised about it. But I do think Edmen Shahbazyan has every other path to victory in this matchup. I think he's probably got the better grappling overall. I think he's definitely got the better striking overall. He's definitely faster. Oh, I don't know, in the cardio, maybe? I don't know. Neither of them have good cardio. Neither of them have good volume. But for me, I'm going to take Shahbazyan. The odds are stupid. It's like -300 or 400 or something like that. Don't play this one. In fact, leave this one off your card. I am bummed out that I spent this much time talking about this video and then had to do it again after accidentally switching it to time-lapse somehow. Anyway, I'm done talking about this fight. Let's go to the next one. My pick's Shahbazyan. Let me know what you got. A heavyweight bout between Chris Daukaus and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Rozenstruik, 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Daukaus, 3-2 in his last 5. Otherwise, their records are very similar, 11-4 and 12-5. So very similar records. But both guys are coming off of a 2-fight losing streak, so nobody really wants that. That's not where you want to be. Both guys are primarily going to be strikers too, so that is an interesting one here, especially in the heavyweight division, where pretty much anybody in the heavyweight division can knock out anybody else, because heavyweights are just big. They hit hard. That's how it works. In this one, though, we've got the more boxing style of Chris Daukaus. He's going to use his long arms, throw down punches with probably a little bit more volume in this matchup. His boxing is good, especially for a heavyweight, because a lot of heavyweights, you see him just load up on big power shots. Daukaus actually uses some pretty crisp boxing. Say what you will, fade Daukaus if you must. I know a lot of people have been, and it's paid off for him in his last 2 fights. But he does have good boxing. And he's also got some good Brazilian jiu-jitsu should the fight end up on the mat. I don't think it will in this fight, but I'm going to highlight it anyway because I do think it's worth highlighting that he has it. So there's that. But the boxing is where Daukaus is going to need to be able to work his game. On the other side, we have Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Now, Rozenstruik is a high-level kickboxer. He's competed in kickboxing as well as in MMA, obviously, because here we are in the UFC. But he has competed in kickboxing as well. I highlight his power specifically because Jairzinho Rozenstruik, although, yes, heavyweights pretty much all have power, Rozenstruik has that next level of power where he can turn your lights off by accident. So Rozenstruik does have some serious power, and I think in this matchup, where he's probably going to be about 20 to 30 pounds heavier than Daukaus, who routinely weighs in around 240 or so, 245, for a heavyweight matchup, with obviously the limit being 265, and Rozenstruik a little bit closer to that limit. 260, I think, was his last weigh-in, or 259, 260, 61, somewhere around there was his last weigh-in. So Rozenstruik's going to actually be the bigger fighter here as far as size goes, and I think that he's going to be able to lay some of that into that power. So there is that. But the problem for Rozenstruik is he's very low volume. He's waiting for that shot, and when he hits it, it's going to hurt. But if he doesn't, you'll see him stand there a lot. On the other side, Daukaus, suspect chin. He's been knocked out in his last 2 fights. So I guess at heavyweight, though, like, does it really matter if you've got a bad chin? I mean, to an extent it does, but at the same time, like I said, these guys are just putting each other's lights out because they're big and powerful guys. Very few heavyweights can eat a shot flush from another heavyweight and not go down. So that's the thing. For this one, though, I think it really doesn't matter, because if Jairzinho or Rozenstruik hits any other heavyweight, he's probably putting them out. But on the other side, Daukaus, that boxing, I do think he does have the better hands. I think the kicking game of Rozenstruik is good. I do think his boxing is fine. It's not bad by any means. But I think that Daukaus, if he can work the volume and actually use his boxing to its fullest, keep the range and stay away from that power of Rozenstruik, I think Daukaus can get a win in this fight. I actually think he probably can even get the finish if he starts moving forward and making Rozenstruik go backward, where he doesn't get to put his power forward, but doesn't get to use his power on the aggressive side. And with the low volume, that is a possibility. I'm going to take Daukaus in this matchup, but I am so not confident in it whatsoever. Part of me is only taking him because I think this fight it could go one of two ways and is pretty close to 50-50. And with Daukaus being the underdog, I'll take the dog just to say, you know what, we're taking another dog. But no, I would not bet this fight. A fair play would be fight doesn't go to decision, but even then, it could. I don't know. A lot of times, so my girlfriend makes fun of me for this sometimes, because, and I might have mentioned this in another video recently, but sometimes a fight will get ready to start, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's no way this one goes to decision. These guys are going to go for a knock. This is definitely going to end early. And then that fight is the most boring, stand there and look at each other, nobody does anything fight on the card. And I've said that plenty of times, and she looks at me every time I say, oh, there's no way this one goes to decision, with the face of like, are you kidding me? You just said that, jinxed it, whatever. So I'm not going to say there's no way this goes to decision, because both guys do hit like trucks, and they should put each other out. But, it might be a really boring fight where nobody does anything. Daukaus doesn't want to get chinned again. Rozenstruik kind of traditionally has low volume. I can see this being a longer, boring fight. If it's lined at 1.5 for the over-under, maybe if you get really good odds on the over 1.5, you take it. But I really do think that inside the distance is probably where it ends. I'm going to take Daukaus, like I said, just for the pick. Not mega confident in it whatsoever. Don't come back at me and tell me I'm a dummy. You can tell me I'm a dummy on a lot of picks for my picks, but this one, I'm really just picking one for the sake of the video. Anyway, let's move to the next fight. I got a confident pick coming up soon, so don't worry. The fight on the card that I am actually most excited for. But before we get into it, if you're watching this video and you've enjoyed it so far, go ahead and hit like for me. I really appreciate it. It helps other people find this channel, and it helps the channel grow. If this channel doesn't grow, well, guess what? I'll stop making videos. That's just what happens. I can't stay around here and do this if the channel just doesn't grow. So do your part. Like the video. Help the channel grow. Another thing, if you're watching this video, and maybe it's your first time here, so I'll give you a pass if it is, and obviously you haven't subscribed yet, it's your first time here. That's okay, I understand, but why don't you do it while we're at it? We're getting into some of the main fights here. This is one of the bigger fights on the card, so why don't you go ahead and subscribe now, so that way when my next video comes out, you'll see it right away. You know where to find them. It's easy to do. You don't have to be like, what was that guy's channel? I really liked his picks. He killed it on the card, picked some great picks. I can't remember his name. Well, guess what? You're subscribed. It's no big deal. Now, maybe you've been sitting around, you've watched a few of these videos now, but you still haven't subscribed. What are you doing? It makes it so much easier on you. Plus, it helps the channel grow. And when the channel grows, guess what? I can keep getting content out, and eventually maybe I can get myself a little bit of free time and cover some more stuff. So subscribe to the video, like the channel, tell your friends about it, all that good stuff. Let's get into this fight because I'm really excited about this one. For this fight, we have Bryce Mitchell, Thug Nasty, 15-0 in his MMA career, 5-0 in his last 5. Ilia Topuria, 12-0, 5-0 in his last 5. Yep. So both guys undefeated. Somebody is losing their O. Somebody is losing this fight, unless we end up with a draw. But somebody's losing this fight, most likely. For Bryce Mitchell, He's obviously the grappler. For Ilia Topuria, he's looked at as probably the striker in this matchup. I don't think it's as simple as that, though. In this matchup, let me cover the physical intangibles real quick. First, Bryce Mitchell does have a bit of a height and reach advantage. He is 5'10" with a 70-inch reach as opposed to 5'7" with a 69-inch reach for Topuria. Anyway, with that said, this matchup isn't as simple as striker-grappler because both guys can do both things. Ilia Topuria, we're going to start with him. He does have that really good striking, and he can knock guys dead at 145 pounds. He can drop guys, put their lights out with one shot or with a flurry of volume, and he can do that at 145 pounds better than a lot of guys can at that same weight class. Something a lot of people forget about, he does have a high level of Greco-Roman wrestling in his background, but here's the thing. I know in videos past, if you've been sticking around the channel for a while, I've said that Greco-Roman wrestling is not the best wrestling for MMA. It's not. That's plain and simple, it's the truth. Greco-Roman has a very specific place. It is good for certain things. When you get a hold of the body, it's typically upper body throws. It's almost the wrestling equivalent of judo, to put it in layman's terms. But that's a broad statement, and it's not exactly accurate. But it gives you an idea if you're not familiar with the different styles of wrestling. Freestyle and folk style are the two styles of wrestling they're very similar. But those two are the styles of wrestling that blend better to MMA than Greco-Roman. But Greco-Roman wrestling isn't useless, and it does play a part in, especially in this matchup, where if Ilia Topuria can get in and get around the body lock, work those upper body throws, I do think he has enough power to be able to throw Bryce Mitchell or control the fight from that wrestling and use that Greco-Roman to maybe stop Bryce from getting it to the ground in different instances. So I don't think it's useless. I just don't think it's the best style of wrestling. So in the comments, don't call me out and say, oh, yeah, well, you said Greco-Roman sucks when you were talking about Grant Dawson versus Mark Madsen. That's not what I said. I just said that folk and freestyle are better than Greco for MMA. So there's that. Anyway, if it does go to the mat, Ilia Topuria is not lost in his jiu-jitsu. I believe he is a black belt as well. He does have good Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's something that you don't get to see in a lot of his fights because it does knock guys dead a lot, but he does have quite a few wins by submission, and he is a very accomplished grappler in his own right. On the other side, though, you do have Bryce Mitchell, who is a top-tier grappler. I don't care what anybody says. He is one of the best grapplers in the 145-pound division. I would actually put his grappling up with just about anybody in the division, probably anybody in the division. It's so good. His grappling is solid. He has chain wrestling takedowns, switch between the single, the high crush, does not matter. He just switch different takedowns and mix you up and eventually get what he wants. And once it does hit the mat, that Brazilian jiu-jitsu is lights out. Everybody talks about his twister submission, which is great and all, don't get me wrong. I think that's awesome. But he can get you with just about whatever. The guy knows his stuff, and on the ground, he is super solid. He does have good striking in his own right as well. People overlook the striking. People are going to say that Topuria is the better striker, which maybe he is. But Bryce Mitchell was able to strike with Edson Barboza and even drop him on the feet. And Edson Barboza is one of the best strikers probably to do it in the UFC ever at one point or another, at least. Yes, he's towards the end of his career now, but Bryce Mitchell made that fight look easy against Edson Barboza, and Barboza hasn't ever been in a fight where he just looked like total trash in the striking department. He's been controlled by grapplers, but Mitchell didn't need that. He was able to strike with him and do well. Another thing that Bryce Mitchell has over most of his competition is his cardio is amazing, and the pace that he can put on with that cardio is second to none. This dude just goes. So in this matchup, it is a very competitive matchup, and don't let me fool you when I do make my pick, because I'm very confident in one side over the other. This fight is very close, and I will not be surprised to say that if my pick is wrong, you can tell me I'm a big dummy, because I'm very confident in one of these guys. But I can understand, I can see the path to victory for both sides. So I understand it. I see it. I see why people are picking against what I'm going to tell you in a moment here. But I am very, very, very much on one of the sides in this matchup, and that is the Bryce Mitchell side. Why do I say that? This dude, when leveling up his skill tree as a human, took all the skill points most people use for basic brain power, common sense, and smartness, basic smartness, and said, nah, I don't need any of that. We're going to put it all towards fighting. This dude fights like a champ. This guy knows how to fight. He might not know a thing or two about what shape the earth is. He might not know a thing or two about whatever else. But let me tell you, Bryce Mitchell can fight. And gosh darn it, he can fight really well. And I don't think that anybody in the featherweight division is going to beat him outside of maybe Volkanovski at this point. I think very highly of Bryce Mitchell's skills. Like I said, I don't want to get into a debate with Bryce Mitchell on what the Earth's shape is, because that's just a losing battle. And you know what? I don't want to fight Bryce Mitchell either. But let me tell you this. Bryce Mitchell, every skill point this guy gets, he puts it into fighting and farming. And you know what? Let me tell you, I'm picking Bryce Mitchell over just about anybody. So I'm very high on the Bryce Mitchell side here. I'm picking him here. Multiple units. Maybe not the house, but I mean, I feel pretty good about Bryce Mitchell here. I don't see him losing. Ilia Topuria, yes, very talented fighter. I think he beats most other fighters in the featherweight division. I just don't see him getting past Mitchell here. And you know what? If I get this fight wrong and Topuria pulls this one off, feel free to come back to this video in the comments and tell me I'm a big dummy and I was all wrong about Bryce Mitchell. You can come back and say, you know what? Ilia Topuria is the best featherweight. And if Topuria can put away Bryce Mitchell and get this win, I'll probably agree with you. So, like I said, if I'm wrong, come back to this video and tell me I'm an idiot. But Bryce Mitchell's the pick, and I'm feeling pretty darn good about it. Let's go to the next fight before I ramble on too much. Middleweight, we have Darren Till taking on Dricus du Plessis. Du Plessis is 17-2 in his career, 5-0 in his last 5, though. For Darren Till, what is going on with Darren Till? The guy's 1-4 in his last 5 fights, and at one point, he was a pretty darn good prospect. People were talking about Darren Till like he was going to be a world champion. What happened? He's 18-4 and 1 draw in his entire career. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights. The dude just fell off. I don't know what happened to Darren Till. I don't know. I thought so much better of him, but after that loss, he just hasn't ever bounced back, it seems. So, yeah, I guess there's that. Anyway, for this matchup, it's very interesting to me because for du Plessis, he moves forward with a volume and these wild strikes that are super untechnical. His striking lacks technique. I put that down here. I'm going to point it out now. His striking has very little refined technique to it, but the volume and the power in his hands, he does put a lot of power to those strikes. The volume and the power while he's coming forward recklessly, yeah, I mean, it gets the job done. He's done well with it. He also has good grappling that you've seen if you've watched any of his regional fights. He does have good grappling he can go to. In the UFC, he hasn't really used it so much, but he does have that option in his back pocket. And in this match, it might be a good path to victory because on the Till side, he does struggle when he's off his back. He doesn't work super well from there. He's more of a striker. From his success is typically in the striking. From his back, he ends up getting controlled, and that's not where he wants to be. So if Dricus du Plessis can get to the grappling, he can hold down Darren Till. So that is something he may go to. Probably not, though. He's probably going to come forward crazy with some strikes. The problem with that is when he does that, he's also very hittable. We've seen him eat some shots. The dude must have a good chin. I should have written that up there, too. The dude does have a good chin because he's eaten plenty of shots, and he's very hittable when he comes forward recklessly. But, yeah, I don't know. He just kind of overwhelms people with volume and ferocity. I assume he has strong cardio. He always looks tired, but the dude just keeps going. So, I don't know. Either the dude's ready to have a heart attack at any moment in there, or the guy's just got great cardio and sometimes, for whatever reason, just looks tired. But for du Plessis, I think he's a better fighter than people give him credit for. Some of the strikes are awkward, like I said, and at first glance, I'm like, man, what is this guy doing? Why does he keep winning these fights? But as I watch, I see as I go back and watch it more and really look into to what he's doing as opposed to just how silly it looks at the moment when he's coming in with his hands by his waist, just flinging shots. Yeah, I mean, he's just overwhelming guys when he sees that as the opportunity. And what he can do is use other techniques because we've seen it in his regional scene fights. He is able to mix in the grappling and use strong grappling from the top there. He just hasn't had to use that. He's been able to use that ferocious volume and striking to win every fight in the UFC so far. So you know what? For me, Dricus du Plessis is not a bad pick here. But on the other side, we have Darren Till, who's a total unknown at this point because the dude has really good striking. He has great body kicks, and especially in matchups where he lines up opposite stance of his opponent, which I believe this one he will. He does have great body kicks. Something I don't understand about Darren Till, maybe one of you guys know, so if you do, please leave it in the comments. After he does some striking, he always slaps his knees and comes back. It's like a reset. He does a knee slap every time. Why does he do that? That seems to me like it's a a good opportunity for the opponent to hit him. I don't. Does he have like a nervous tick? Is that what it is? I don't know. I'm not trying to like make fun of the guy. Like I just wonder why he does that in his fights. Has anybody else noticed it? Where he just like has to slap his knee. It's like a need. Need. Knee. That was dumb. Anyway, Darren Till's the better striker. He's the cleaner striker. Has the prettier strikes. He should win the striking battle. But Duplessis could just run him over. Who knows? Especially with the way Darren Till's looked. I don't know. I'm leaving this fight off. I'm not gonna pick on. I'll give you a pick. I'm gonna make a pick. I'll pick Duplessis just for the simple fact that Darren Till is 1-4 in his last 5 fights, and he just hasn't looked like Darren Till. He's looked like some other guy that's in Darren Till. He looks okay. Dated reference. Y'all remember that movie Space Jam? So Darren Till lately has looked like the NBA players after the Monstars had stole their talent, and they're out there trying to play basketball like they've been doing their whole darn career at the highest level, and all of a sudden they just can't. Darren Till's looking like that lately, and I don't understand what's going on. He's just not looking like Darren Till. So I can't pick Darren Till, so I'll take Duplessis. I can't bet this fight, though, because if Darren Till does come out like the old Darren Till, I think he wins this fight no problem. So for me, the pick's Duplessis, not confident in whatsoever. Don't bet this fight. After some shifting of the card, this is now our co-main event of the evening. We have Paddy the Baddie Pimblett taking on Jared Flash Gordon in the 155-pound lightweight division. For both guys, they have 19 wins in their career, only 5 losses for Gordon and only 3 losses for Pimblett. Pimblett is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, 4-1 for the Gordon side. There is a height and reach advantage for Paddy Pimblett here. He is 5'10". He's not 10'5". He's 5'10" with a 73-inch reach, and 5'9" with a 68-inch reach for the Gordon side. Now, to start with Jared Gordon, he's kind of getting overlooked in this matchup, and something that's interesting to me is he actually started as the favorite. So, interesting there. The odds have since flipped, and now Paddy is, of course, the favorite. But Gordon started as the favorite, and the reason why, he's a very solid all-arounder. He's got good wrestling, a decent cage push. He can work the strikes pretty well. He's decent in the striking. He's got staying power. He's hard to put away. Yes, he has been finished before, but he's hard to put away. And he's got decent enough cardio to stay through all 3 rounds, no problem. In a 3-round fight, you're not going to wear out Jared Gordon that bad. There's been a couple instances recently where you start to worry, but I think Jared Gordon has the cardio to hang in a 15-minute fight, and he has the skills to fight anywhere that this fight takes place and do so at a pretty good level. The problem here is Paddy Pimblett. Of course, he has the reach advantage in this, and actually, Jared Gordon has a shorter wingspan than he does height, which is kind of rare for UFC fighters. But so Pimblett's going to have a pretty good reach advantage, and he has some serious power in his hands, and he is fast. The problem for Pimblett on the feet, though, is he's very hittable. We've seen him dropped in numerous fights in the UFC. In fact, it's kind of the trope that he gets dropped in every fight and then comes back and wins. At least that's what it was up until the Jordan Levitt fight, because Levitt doesn't really strike very good at all. But he does have power in his hands, and he's quick. But where he really succeeds is in this grappling. Paddy Pimblett has very strong grappling, and his submission game is high level. We've seen him with some crazy stuff, the flying triangles. Obviously he's got a couple of rear naked choke wins already in the UFC. The guy is a top level grappler, or at least pretty close to. But the problem is his striking. He likes to do that too much sometimes, and that eventually is going to catch up to him. Maybe not in this fight, because yes, Jared Gordon is a decent striker. I don't think he's putting Paddy out in one shot. But at some point, that's going to catch up with him. In this one, not so much. For Paddy here, in the Jordan Levitt fight that he had prior to this one, it showed that he can keep up against a guy who does have good wrestling. Because say what you will about Jordan Levitt's striking, it's not very good at all. But what Jordan Levitt has is really good wrestling, and Paddy Pimblett was able to out-grapple Jordan Levitt after the fight kind of went on for a little while. Levitt had some success early on, but Pimblett was able to take over in the grappling department. That really impressed me because it shows that Paddy Pimblett does have good grappling, even against good grapplers. And although I may not think Jordan Levitt's ever going to be the champion, I do think Jordan Levitt's grappling is a good test against for someone to see how their grappling stacks up. And for that, Paddy Pimblett got the nod there by grappling with a grappler and actually got the submission finish. So I do like that a lot. in this matchup, if you were able to get Paddy Pimblett when the line opened and he was like plus 130, that is a gold mine right there. I hope you bet it hard because Paddy Pimblett should get the win here. I am picking Paddy Pimblett. I think he's playable up to about minus 200. Anything over that, and you're starting to get a little bit worried. You can play him inside the distance to save yourself some money on the odds there, and I don't mind that actually because I do think Pimblett is a finisher. That's what he likes to do. If he goes to decision, he sometimes will lose those fights. Soren Bach was able to control him a little bit with his wrestling. Soren Bach does have good wrestling. And that was Paddy Pimblett's last loss was to Soren Bach, who, if you are familiar with him in Bellator, he actually just lost recently in Bellator a few months ago. But either way, Soren Bach does have good wrestling, and that showed that Paddy obviously has improved that because he was able to get the win over Jordan Levitt. But either way, Paddy Pimblett should be able to get this one done. If he loses, it's going to be a decision, but if he wins, it's probably a finish. I do think Paddy's going to be able to finish Jared Gordon, although he is hard to put out. So, the pick, Paddy Pimblett. I don't mind an inside the distance play if you're feeling a little bit more risque. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think Paddy Pimblett's got this one in the bag? Do you think Jared Gordon's going to cause the upset? And maybe there was a reason that the odds makers had him as the original favorite. Let me know what you guys think. We've got our main event next, and I'm looking forward to breaking it down for you, and I'm sure you're going to be interested in hearing the crazy takes I have on this one. Here it is, the main event of the evening. But real quick, another reminder, like the stinking video and subscribe to the gosh darn channel. I really appreciate it, all right? So into the next, this big main event here. This is for the vacant 205-pound light heavyweight championship. We have Jan Blachowicz, the former champion, who lost his title to Glover Teixeira, who then lost his title to Yuri Prochazka, who then lost his title to hurting his shoulder and vacating the title, taking on Magomed Ankalaev, who is kind of the boogeyman of the division, coming up through the ranks, beating just about everybody except for Paul Craig. He lost that one last second, just like Paul Craig does for every fight when he wins. It's last second submission. So we've got a big matchup here. Now, Jan Blachowicz, 29-9 in his career. Now, the reason I highlight that is because he's got quite a few losses. He had a rough start to his UFC career. Started out like, 2-6 or something like that. And then went on a tear and started beating everybody. He's now 4-1 in his last 5. That one loss is the Glover Teixeira loss where he lost the title. On the other side, we have Magomed Ankalaev, 18-1 in his whole career. That one loss was Paul Craig. 5-0 in his last 5, obviously. The interesting thing here, Jan Blachowicz is kind of getting up there in age. He's 39 years old, but this isn't light heavyweight where you can kind of fight a little bit older. The guy he lost the title to was 42, so it does make sense. You can have a little bit more staying power in the later division, so there is that. But Magomed Ankalaev is 30, hitting that prime right now. He's ready to go. He's ready to claim the title, and that's what a lot of people believe is going to happen here. And let me tell you why. So the reason is, a lot of people think, oh, yeah, his name ends in a V, and he's from Russia, so he's probably a really good wrestler. Well, yeah, he is a good wrestler, but he's actually a better kickboxer than he is wrestler. His kickboxing is very solid. He does have very fast kicks. He can snap them to all levels. Legs, body, head, does not matter, and they come up quick, does not matter. He puts it out there really fast. The hands aren't bad either. He can still throw the punches really well, but the kicks are the best aspect of that game. Something else that's really interesting about him is he doesn't really get hit a lot. He's hard to hurt. He stays safe, controls the distance well. The problem, though, if he wins this fight via decision, which is probably how I think he does win against somebody like Blachowicz, is probably by decision. If he does, it's going to be boring as molasses. It's going to be slow. It's going to be bad because Ankalaev is very reserved. And yes, it wins in fights, but it's not the most exciting style to watch, am I right? So for Ankalaev, he puts a pace that does not tax his cardio too much, rightfully so. He's a big guy, 205 pounds. He puts a pace that if he doesn't think he can get the guy out of there in the first round or whatever, come out with some strong shots. He knocked out Dalcha Lungiambula pretty easily with a head kick. So there is that. He can come out and do that. I don't think he's going to do that against Jan Blachowicz, and I don't think he thinks he's going to do that against Jan Blachowicz. So I see him playing a more safe fight here, and realistically, his best path to victory is the takedown, because on the Jan Blachowicz side, Jan Blachowicz, very solid striking in his own right. Don't get me wrong, the guy can strike. He actually has a longer reach than Ankalaev, even though I think Ankalaev is a little bit taller, like an inch taller or something like that. He does actually have a longer reach, not by much, a couple inches. wasn't worth putting on the board. But that striking, very powerful, and he has some very, very strong kicks. When he snaps that kick up, you saw it in the Dominic Reyes fight when he hit Dominic Reyes. The guy's body just turned purple immediately, busted up everything. He hit his arm turned purple. Dominic Reyes was all sorts of trouble from those kicks. Jan Blachowicz hits like a freight train, and that is no joke. The legendary Polish power, it's a real thing. Jan Blachowicz has it, and he still has it at this point in his career at 39 years of age. He still has that Polish power. It's not going anywhere. Something else, he has really good striking defense. So although the kickboxing acumen on Ankalaev's side is there, Jan Blachowicz is hard to hit, hard to hurt. So there is that. He also has decent takedown defense. The problem, though, is if Jan Blachowicz does get taken down, he does have decent takedown defense, like I said, but if he does get taken down, he can be controlled, and that's not something that you want when you're a guy like Jan Blachowicz who has that power on the feet, but on the ground, yeah, if he's working off his back, he just doesn't have much to bring to the table. So best path to victory for Ankalaev here is to use that wrestling. Although that's usually his plan B, it should be his plan A here. So if Ankalaev wants to get this win, I think if he mixes in the wrestling early on and can bank a couple of rounds with the takedown and use that, just smother out Blachowicz, who is fairly easy to smother out if you can get up on top of him, then yeah, I think Ankalaev cruises to a decision that way. However, Jan Blachowicz can also get on top in a grappling situation, and he's actually pretty good on top, and he can actually damage you with some power because, like I said, that Polish power is real. So for Jan Blachowicz here, his best path to victory is actually going to be keeping on the feet. And although I know Ankalaev is probably the more technical striker, I think Jan Blachowicz is going to be the better striker in this matchup, and I know that's crazy to say because sometimes the technique isn't what does it. If Jan Blachowicz can get Ankalaev backing up, I think this fight is Jan Blachowicz's fight to win. And what's going to happen is Blachowicz is going to be able to land some power shots on him. Ankalaev's going to get hurt early. If Blachowicz can back him up. So if Blachowicz wants to get this win, he needs to put the pressure on Ankalaev. We've seen it in a few fights where an Ankalaev is backing up. He doesn't do as well. He doesn't strike as well. That wrestling's not really there. And that's for most fighters. So it's not specifically to Ankalaev, but he doesn't handle backing up very well. And with that slow pace, he doesn't also take over very early on, especially in a 5-round fight like we have here for the championship. So for me, I think this fight is going to go one of two ways. It's going to be either Ankalaev winning in the grappling department or Blachowicz winning with strikes. And I do think Blachowicz, if he does win, he can put Ankalaev out of there. Like I said, the guy hits so hard. I see it. I can see the knockout here. And at the odds, gosh darn it, I know I'm going to look like a fool if I get this one wrong. I'm either going to look like a genius or a fool. And like I said, I'm big on Thug Nasty. He's an underdog. I'm picking Jan Blachowicz here. I think the Polish power is going to come through. I think he's going to be able to put down Ankalaev because I don't think Ankalaev can withstand that shot. And I don't think over 5 rounds, I don't think that Ankalaev can control Jan Blachowicz the whole time. I think there's too many moments that Jan Blachowicz is going to have. I think his cardio is good enough to stay in this fight. I think there's going to be too many moments that he's going to have where he can land a big shot, hurt Ankalaev. Maybe he hurts him with a leg kick. Maybe he hurts him with a body kick. Maybe he drops him with a head kick, or maybe he just punches him in the face. Jan Blachowicz hits so friggin' hard. It doesn't matter how he hits you. When he hits you, he damages you, and it's going to put an effect on a guy over the course of 25 minutes. I think Blachowicz gets this one done, especially if you're going to give him to me at plus 200 or more on the odds. Not a big shot. I'm not as confident in Blachowicz as I am in Thug Nasty. I'm riding Thug Nasty all the way to the bank. That sounded real weird. I'm taking Thug Nasty all the way to the bank with me while we're cashing them slips. But for Jan Blachowicz, I do like the play there. I haven't done it yet. I probably will play Blachowicz. But if you are going to play Blachowicz, you're probably going to want to play him right before the fight because I assume that Magomed Ankalaev is going to be a massive favorite come fight time. Maybe play Blachowicz Friday night, Saturday morning. I feel like that's when he's going to be one of probably the biggest of the underdog for the odds. But I got Blachowicz here. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys think I'm crazy, don't parlay those two. I know that as much as I'd like to think that would be awesome, maybe throw like $1 on it and parlay the two, and just so you can say that it hit, because that'd be crazy to see Blachowicz and Bryce Mitchell both hit as pretty decent sized underdogs. I guess Mitchell's not that big, like 145. But yeah, I'm taking Blachowicz. Let me know. Like the video, subscribe, comment below, tell me all of your picks. I love to see them. If you haven't checked out my Bellator breakdown, that's also on the channel. You're going to see it pop up here any second. So that's that, or maybe it's already up. I don't know. See you guys on the next week. We've got some sick fights before the end of the year, and I'm looking forward to them. Two of my favorite fighters on the next card. See you there.